Well, welcome back here. I wanted to share some thoughts on what I experience with clients and maybe some of the challenges that hurdles other people face as well, myself included, when it comes to that. We were having a conversation with a group of clients earlier today about their why. And I don't know if at any time in my life the question of why was relevant or was a part of the conversation. I just don't remember it. I don't think I necessarily asked it that way. Obviously, I was in ministry. The easy answer at that time was to serve. It was to serve. It was about service. And bigger picture, serve God in some capacity. But I now working with people see the real struggle with that, and I often wonder why. Like why is it so hard? Why is it so difficult for people to answer that question? Again, I can only speak as a man, and the one thought that does come to mind, and that I find often working with people, is we have a tendency to get so trapped in our head that we want to try to think our way through. We want to find the answer. We want to resolve this problem in order to move on to the next thing. And any of us, I think, that have worked in different companies, that's the way production happens. That's the way we're in many ways trained to operate. You finish one, you go on to the next thing. But that's all head. It's very logical. It's very much, I could figure those things out. But the why, and answering something much deeper about yourself, comes from the heart. It comes from the soul. It comes from somewhere within yourself. And yet most of us aren't given the tools to be able to listen in that way, because we've become so accustomed to hearing our head, to listening to the voice in our head. And I mean, I've seen this 1,000 times over, even in ministry as well. People, the way people would identify God was very much a logical answer to the question. It was very hard to move it down to a deeper level, because we want answers. We want certainty. We want things figured out. We want to be able to put it in a box. None of these things, like the question of why, or even in that experience of talking about God, can be put in a box. Like, you have to literally be able to learn to listen to yourself in a different way. Now, for me, and I'll probably offer more of this on this channel as time goes on, it has been about meditation. And I've talked to many people about meditation. Meditation remains a central part of my own daily routine because of the value I think it has brought me. And the response I often get from people is, well, is that how you find the answer? I can't even say that's necessarily true. I think what it has helped me to do over time, and being consistent with it and practicing daily is a necessary part of meditation, is being able to separate yourself from that voice in your head and begin to listen to the voice deeper within yourself. It doesn't happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen in a week. This is a lifelong process, a lifelong commitment to really learning more about yourself and learning to separate those voices out, because the one in your head can just control beyond belief. Because we love logic, we love answers, we love certainty, we love everything that is known. This journey, and for me again through meditation, has been about confronting the unknown. Confronting the unknown of my own life, confronting the unknown of my own why and my own purpose, which are huge questions for people to answer. And if I try to figure those answers out by logically processing it, it's just not going to work. It's going to continue to keep you contained. It's going to continue to keep you boxed in the way that you've learned to box yourself in. And you could do it and you'll be like, here I go again. I'm in the same spot. Why do I keep ending up at the same intersection and never going a different direction? Why am I not able to make a different choice when it feels like I have? You haven't, because you're following the same pattern over and over again of your own life. You're using your head to answer these much bigger and much deeper questions of who you are, what you're about, why you're doing it. those questions just can't come from your head. And so the pivot that often takes place, and even when we hear about midlife crisis and stuff like that, is really where that pivot is trying to take place in our lives. And the forced reaction is to try to, again, logically figure out the answer. But the invitation is coming not from your head, it's coming from within yourself. It's coming because you haven't been satisfied. It's coming because you haven't felt fulfilled, like you've been successful, and yet things still aren't right in your life. That's not coming from your head, it's coming from here. It's coming from your heart, it's coming from your soul. That's why those moments, like midlife crisis, are so important, to be able to listen in a different way. That's the invitation. It's the invitation to be able to listen and hear yourself through a different lens, through a different voice, because this voice will continue you down your same path. And I see it manifested over and over again through regret, through resentment, because I haven't been able to make that real pivot. What appears to be a pivot often isn't a pivot. It's just another logical answer to a life that you're trying to figure out. And I think it's so important to recognize we all go through that. We all go through this in one form or another. Myself included, I've talked about it over and over again about my experience of leaving ministry. I had to make that pivot. That pivot was necessary because it wasn't my life to live. We just recorded a podcast yesterday about movies, and one of the things is we begin to believe that the character that we have created for ourselves is who I really am. And that's not always true. It may be a character that works for a particular time, for a particular moment in your life, but that doesn't mean it's the character that remains for your entire life. There are going to be moments where you do have to reinvent yourself, where you got to do things differently, because the character has become too small. The character has become too contained, too boxed in, and something within you is going to try to push those walls through. It's going to try to push against what you have created. And that's okay. Allow it to push, allow it to keep going, because that's where you're really going to begin to answer that question of your own why, your own purpose, your own answer to in some ways living out your call, your vocation, whatever word you want to use, requires the pushing through the walls that you have created for yourself. The walls keep you comfortable. The walls keep you in your head. They keep you bound in these parameters, like kind of if you have ever gone bowling when you with kids, those bumpers. The bumpers keep you from getting hurt, and that's all that voice in your head is trying to do. It's trying to keep you from getting hurt. In reality, though, it is hurting you by continuing to listen to it and following it. There's something much bigger within you that is trying to pull you forward, that's trying to, in some sense, summon you out of yourself to really live life in a much more different and probably what feels like a radical way, because it's outside the box. Everyone says they don't want to be in the box. Everyone says that's what they want. But when you start to push against those edges, when you start to push against the walls of that box, the natural reaction, I'm going to run right back. I'm going to run right back to what I know, because that's what I know, and it's safe, and it's gotten me this far. I don't care about anything else. I'll be miserable if that's what it takes, just in order not to change. And so if you find yourself asking those bigger questions, whether it's midlife or it's another point in your life where things just aren't making sense, where you're looking for something more is another way that it often manifests itself. If you find yourself asking those things, don't go the logical route. Don't go the route that you've used. Try something like meditation, which can help begin to separate those voices out so that you can begin to recognize, all right, that's the voice that's trying to hold me back. There's another voice within me that's really trying to be heard. It's often quiet. It's a much still voice. Some will call it the divine. You can call it whatever you will. It's that voice that we're trying to look for. It's that voice that's really going to give us maybe not even the answer right away, but it's going to give us the question we're really meant to ask about our why and our purpose, and why we're here, and how we're going to give back, and the impact that we want to create in the world. So find what works for you. Again, meditation works for me. I'll talk more about it because of the impact it's had on my life. Find what works for you, and begin to really separate those voices, and listen for that voice in your heart, in your soul, that's trying to be summoned and trying to summon you to something more in your life.